Hello, Duke fans. Welcome in to the Duke Blue Devils Insider Podcast, your daily podcast for all things Duke Blue Devils athletics. We thank you for joining in today, as well as every day, to check out everything in your daily podcast for Duke Blue Devils athletics. My name is Hugh Strain, your daily host, as well as Duke beat writer at Duke Blue Devils on SI. Duke Blue Devils coming off a 67-49 victory over Boston College. Boston College now moves to 9-13 overall in the season, 2-7 in league play. One of the weakest teams, not only in the ACC, but in all of college basketball. It's a very sloppy half for Duke in the second half. If you watched yesterday's show, we broke that game down. Duke shot over 60% from the field and 46% from three in the first half. That number dropped all the way to under 32% from the field and 0 of 7 from beyond the arc in the second half. Nonetheless, did Duke take its foot off the gas? Probably. Does it matter? No, I don't think so. One of the weakest teams in Power Conference basketball. That's what happened. Duke still gets an 18-point victory. Duke has now won 8 of its last 9 games by double-digit points as we get ready for the first edition of the best rivalry in college basketball. This Saturday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time in Chapel Hill, Duke will take on North Carolina in what I think is the best matchup on paper between Duke and North Carolina of the last several years. This bodes to be an instant classic in both matchups we get this season, and potentially 3 if the two squads end up meeting in the ACC tournament. But the best on paper matchup, I think, of the last 3 seasons. Duke has kind of controlled this rivalry over the last few years, and I think this is the year where we're back to the Duke-North Carolina rivalry we're used to, instant classics, game in and game out. The first edition coming on February 7th, Saturday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, North Carolina has dealt with some defensive struggles throughout the season, and early on it looked like a major concern. North Carolina started 2-3 in league play with back-to-back losses to Stanford and California. Looked like the defense was a major issue, but it has found its footing across its last few games, at least on the offensive side of the ball. North Carolina has won 4 in a row against Notre Dame, Virginia, Georgia Tech, and Syracuse. Despite allowing 75 or more points in 3 of those games, it's averaging 88.5 points scored per game in those 4 over that stretch. North Carolina is hot. They're now 18-4 on the season and 6-3 in league play, entering the rivalry matchup on a 4-game win streak. Will pose for a fantastic matchup for the Blue Devils, really all over the floor. I think in the backcourt, Duke will control the game, and I think the backcourt will be the biggest story of this game. Isaiah Evans has been cold. Duke as a whole from the outside, 3-point shooting has been cold. And I think this is the game above all others for the remainder of the season, but maybe with the exception of Duke's neutral court matchup against Michigan at Capital One Arena on February 21st. Even with that, this will be the game that I think decides what Duke's ceiling can be without Cam Boozer. Cam Boozer, as we all know at this point, has been the most dominant player in college basketball and is the runaway favorite for the National Player of the Year award. It isn't even a debate. Recently, coming off of 19 points and 12 boards, his 11th double-double of the 2025-26 campaign against Boston College. He's 3rd in the nation in scoring at over 23 points per game, almost 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and just under 2 steals for the Blue Devils. Leads the team in every major statistical category besides blocks. He has been the most dominant player in the country. It's not close. He's the National Player of the Year. Probably won't be the number 1 pick in the 2026 NBA draft, but that's besides the point. He is the best player in college basketball. Why does that matter? It matters because North Carolina might be legitimately the only team in the country, I think maybe with the exception of Arizona as well, but legitimately the only team in college basketball that can all over the floor, or at least for the most part, match up with Duke in terms of length. Jon Scheyer builds his teams based off of defensive length and versatility, and that's how they take opponents down. They make life difficult for them in the paint. They dominate inside and use that length, switchability, and versatility on the defensive side of the ball to make life extremely difficult for opponents. Duke is top 5 nationally at KenPom in adjusted offensive efficiency and adjusted defensive efficiency, one of 2 teams in the entire nation to be in top 5 in both of those metrics. And a lot of that has to do with how John Shire builds his programs with elite length and switchability. Duke can switch 1 through 5 with almost any rotation on the floor, or at least switch 1 through 4. And UNC, it can't necessarily do that as well as Duke, but it has the length to compete with the Blue Devils better than maybe any other team in college basketball. And Duke and North Carolina fans are just lucky enough that they're going to get this matchup twice this season, with the first one coming on Saturday night. And the numbers back it up. According to KenPom, Duke is the second tallest team in college basketball. North Carolina is the third tallest team in college basketball. And why this supporting cast for Duke will matter so much more than it has in probably any other game this season is because this is the most likely game where Cameron Boozer is held in check, at least to whatever extent you can imagine. He has 11 double-doubles, 4 30-point games, hasn't scored in single digits all season. He has yet to shoot under 50% from the field in any ACC game so far. But what can we expect? Is it realistic to expect that Cameron Boozer can be held to, say, 8 points and 5 rebounds with this UNC frontcourt? That may sound ridiculous, but let me tell you why that could be the case. UNC's frontcourt is absolutely elite with 7-footer Henry Vasar and 6'10 Caleb Wilson. And it's potentially the best defensive frontcourt duo in the entire country. Duke and UNC legitimately might have the best defensive frontcourt duos in the nation. As we just mentioned, Vasar and Wilson for UNC, and then Cameron Boozer and either Patrick Gungba or Malik Brown, whoever you choose to slot in there, for Duke. And when you look at North Carolina's defensive numbers, they're not a good defensive team. That's been proven all season. North Carolina is 56th nationally, according to KenPom, in adjusted defensive efficiency. It's also 184th in opponent three-point shooting percentage, 34.1% to its opponents. However, it is 5th in the entire country in opponent two-point shooting percentage at 44.0%. This front court has been dominant. Caleb Wilson and Henry Vasar have been UNC's most productive players. They're 2 leading scorers and 2 leading rebounders, and they've also been elite. Here's why it could pose problems for Cam Boozer and the rest of Duke. Over Duke's last 5 games, it has outscored its opponents in the paint 218 to 88. That is plus 130 in the paint for Duke relative to its opponents. But Cameron Boozer has obviously done a big part of that, and Duke really hasn't faced a team all season that's been able to match its length, because there are 1, 2, maybe 3 teams in the entire country that can actually do that. North Carolina is one of those teams, and it's the first team Duke's faced this season that can effectively match their size and effectively take Cam Boozer out of the game. Now, the argument is, Cam Boozer hasn't been taken out of the game so far this season. Obviously, we all know that. What about UNC besides just the length itself makes that happen? Cameron Boozer is the center of attention for every defensive game plan for every opponent Duke has played. And correct, no one has been able to shut him down even a little bit. He's been the most dominant player in the country by so far. But UNC is the first team that will be actively game planning to shut him down while having the length necessary to effectively do that, with Vasar and Wilson down low, who can both play on the floor at the same time. Wilson is an elite athlete. Both are very good shot blockers, and both are just solid defenders all around and defend the paint at an extremely high level. Will they bring a double on Cam Boozer? I think that's a very interesting conversation, because with Pat Gungba emerging as a real offensive piece for Duke, more so than I think a lot of fans and insiders assumed he'd be this season, who knows if they'll double Boozer. If they do, they can effectively take him out of the game. And I think that's a really, really interesting topic to see how it plays out. Is, let's just imagine Cameron Boozer is completely taken out of this game. Can Duke be competitive with one of the better teams in college basketball? UNC isn't there defensively, but they are there on the offensive side of the ball, and they proved it over this last 4-game stretch that they can be very, very dangerous offensively. So in a world where Cameron Boozer isn't the Cameron Boozer we're used to seeing, say he goes for 13 points and 11 rebounds, can Duke compete to win a high major game on the road? I think that's the biggest storyline heading into this game. But above all, I think it's the most likely game so far where Cameron Boozer is taken out of the ball game. This front court of Henry Vasar and Caleb Wilson is legit. They combine for almost 40 points and almost 20 rebounds game in and game out. Again, the top 2 scorers and rebounders for the Tar Heels, and the Tar Heels are hot. Duke has been cold from 3 as of late. Across this last 5-game stretch, just 29 of 97 from the three-point line. That's under 30%. And this could be the game where Cameron Boozer isn't the Cameron Boozer we're used to, just by sake of UNC has the length to match it. The biggest storyline going into this game, aside from Cameron Boozer getting taken out, if he does, again, in a way, there's no reason to believe that he will because he's been so dominant all season. But in a world when he does, on the road against a team that can match his length, can Duke compete without Boozer at his best? That is the biggest storyline going into this game, and that's what we're going to be following till Saturday night. Stay tuned with us all week as we continue to break down Duke versus UNC ahead of the rivalry matchup on Saturday night. Once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in today and every day to the Duke Blue Devils Insider Podcast. That's going to do it for us here today. Make sure to stay up to date with everything Duke Blue Devils athletics by visiting us at si.com/college/Duke. My name is Hugh Strain, your daily host, as well as Duke beat writer at Duke Blue Devils on SI. I'll see you tomorrow.